I'm Mike Redner, and this is Capitol Views, and we're here with Senator Hollis French, who's the minority leader in the Senate, and he comes from Anchorage. And Hollis, I guess one of the issues on the table this year is education. Where are we?
You know, it's a perennial issue, Mike. I was first elected in 2002, came down here in 2003, and it seems like education's been, a dominant theme through the 12 years I've been in the legislature. The governor came out in the State of the State address, put a series of education proposals in front of us, some of which, we proposed from our side in years past. And of course, then he dropped the voucher issue on us. And so that's elevated the visibility of education a lot this session.
So what's happening between those two?
Well, the voucher issue, has passed now through the Senate Finance Committee, sits in Senate Rules, and the sponsors are out trying to find 14 votes. It's a constitutional amendment. Your viewers know it takes 14 votes to pass in the Senate.
So that's sort of moving forward, but we've yet, on the education basket, I guess we'll call it.
Well, I think the part of the bill is to eliminate the high school graduation qualifying exit exam. That's something that we proposed from our side. Senator Berta Gardner proposed that last year. We think that's a good idea. It's probably a time for that to go away. Some of the other ideas the governor's put forward are fairly modest. It's hard to argue against a 21st century classroom, hard to argue against using the ACT as a way to gauge the level of students' readiness when they graduate. I think those will be fairly non-controversial.
But in that bill, he does support the new regional schools that seem to be blossoming up.
That's one of the more interesting aspects. I've traveled a lot during my time in the Senate to different parts of the states, and I'm not sure that that's not something we can work on. I think it is something we can work on, is what I'm trying to say. Folks recognize that it's hard to maintain a full high school in every single town and village. Folks like the idea of maybe going to Bethel, going to Nome, going to Kotzebue, a regional center, and doing your school there, not being completely separated from your family. But again, we haven't seen the bones of this idea. We haven't seen fleshed out, and we don't know what all the particulars are.
But that's also a way they can offer vocational technical, which is very complex and expensive. But it seems like that's come from the bottom up.
Right, the communities seem to be saying, we need more for education. A lot of this comes from the lawsuit that was settled last year on school construction, and some of it just comes from a desire from the communities to see more done, in their regions instead of, all of it being centered in Anchorage and Fairbanks, Juneau.
And they're sort of partnering, their career schools and different things together. It seems like there's a spontaneous element that's out there. So traditionally, too, those kinds of bills move towards the end of the session. They're money bills. And,
especially on the education funding, I wouldn't expect to see it resolved early. We're still trying to get a handle on what the exact state of the state's finances are. Will we take $3 billion off the table and put it into the TERS liability? That I think is meeting some resistance from the finance co-chairs. They're looking at the pot of money they have to work with, and they're seeing that it's diminishing. And to pull $3 billion off the table, I think is making them somewhat nervous. That's one of the areas where, frankly, we Democrats happen to agree with the governor. Another idea that we had backed in years past, Senator Johnny Hollis had proposed that $3 billion transfer a couple of years ago, and we still think it's a good idea.
Well, there's also, on the House side, you hear talk of pension bonds, and I guess they're not mutually exclusive. You could do a bit of both.
I think, the fancier you make this, the more your costs go up. Either it's like a mortgage on your house. Either you pay the thing down or you don't, and it strikes me you just have to make a hard decision and go ahead and pay it down.
And it's a big bill.
It's not. I mean, $3 billion is not. When I first got here, that was the entire state budget for the state, and so we're taking that and really it goes back to the foresight that we showed and the discipline we showed during the last few years, 2007, 8, 9, and 10. We were banking money. I think it's one thing that the public's never fully appreciated was the degree to which we showed fiscal restraint. Even though we had big budgets those years and big capital budgets, we were in 2008, good example, we banked $5 billion. Took $5 billion off the table and put it into savings.
And basically, PERS and CHERS, it really wasn't a matter of negligence. It was the .com, and then we no sooner made some patchwork on that than we got hit.
There's a lot of back and forth about that. I think there was there was more aggressive squeezing of those contributions on behalf of the legislature in the leaner budget years in 1999, 2000, 2001. But you combine that with rapidly increasing medical costs and poor stock market performance, and suddenly, every state in the union practically was behind on their pension obligations.
And whether it's business or the state, what medical costs are a runaway.
Well, we're starting to see some progress on that, but they've been a cost driver. When you've got 4.5%, 5% growth in your medical costs year over year, that adds up. But we're starting to see, I think, nationwide that curve is bending. There's an old saying that a tree cannot grow to the sky, and ultimately we can't all pay all of our money for healthcare costs. So at some point, those costs had to bend.
And you tackled that at one time. I mean, it was exhausting.
It's a big topic, and it's one that I'm glad has been tackled on the federal level. Although we still have a lot of room to make up here in Alaska. A lot of folks were disappointed when we didn't see Medicaid expanded, when the governor decided not to do that, in spite of the Chamber of Commerce, State Chamber, all in favor of it, leaving a lot of federal dollars on the table. It's interesting because we've had a policy almost in statehood. Maximize federal investment in Alaska, help us build our infrastructure.
Hollis, we're out of time.
Time goes fast. Thanks for
I'm
the
Mike
chance to come
Bradner,
in.
and this has been Capitol Views, and we've been talking to Hollis French, Minority Leader in the Senate. And Hollis, thank you for being with us.
Appreciate you having me on, Mike.